Hi, everyone. Welcome to Soul Speak. I'm Talia Pardo. It is my greatest joy and pleasure to welcome back Abby Kneipp to the show. You were here on this show almost exactly a year ago. You were my sixth guest in my first season. I'll tell everybody a little bit about you. Abby is uh, a healer that has dedicated her life and her soul to the healing arts, to understanding how the human psyche works, and to initiating women into the depths of their ancient feminine wisdom. She has traveled the world and sat with many different indigenous tribes, learning the ancient ways that she so beautifully embodies and bridges the ancient with the modern in everything she does. She works in so many different soul deep spaces that I think the world is just starting to explore today, like ancient feminine wisdom, womb magic and healing, and our multidimensional nature, among many other things. You just have this all-encompassing magic, I think, that you bring to the world. And I'm so, so grateful to have you here today. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for that, beautiful woman. And I'm so excited and honored to be back here. I just adore you, sister, and everything that you are and all that you stand for. So I know this is going to be a very juicy deep dive with you today.
Mm.
So thank you for having me again.
Thank you. Well, yeah, so because the last time we talked kind of, and I had last season just be in the general realm of healing, and we let conversations kind of go where they may, and it was very, very powerful. This season, my focus and I feel like I'm being called to do so, is to really hone in on understanding the masculine and the feminine, but really being able to bring, so I've spoken to some male coaches, but I really want to bring women in to speak about understanding and appreciating the masculine and seeing it
Mm,
as a divine complement and counterpart to us instead of an opponent, right? And how do we explore that? How do women learn to appreciate the masculine without denigrating it or without pushing it away? And what do men need from us? Like, how do we step into our femininity in order to best
mm,
connect with them? And, and how do we best understand? So it is a little lopsided in that I'm really trying to put the focus on understanding men and, appreciating and honoring the masculine, but without forgetting that the feminine is in both of us, is in each of us as well, right? We each embody the masculine and feminine, and not to forget that our feminine selves are equally as potent and magical, if not more sometimes, because we're just so expressive and creative with it, right? But there's no better or worse.
mm,
There's just love and appreciation for each. So I think this is going to be an incredible deep dive. Abby, you have so much wisdom and such a deep connection
mm.
to source that yeah, I think this is going to be great. So let's get started. I'm going to ask you first, maybe, to just dip our toes into when you work with your clients around ancient feminine wisdom, like maybe let's start there. What do you want them to understand, or what are you trying to teach?
Great question. So for me, it's primarily to do with a woman being in her truest nature. That is probably the most simplified version I can give around the mystery because there is never like a clear linear path when it comes to the feminine.
Hmm.
But if we are trying to make ourselves be like men, then already in that sense, we're dishonoring the masculine. And when I really
Mm.
understood that,
Ooh,
and it's not to shame ourselves, it's not to go,
no.
oh my gosh, I'm a not a good person. It's got nothing to do with that. It's recognizing, wow, why am I trying to be like something I'm not? And obviously, of course, it's because of the system that we're in. It's not built for us to really understand what we're made of as women. So when I take women into the mystery, it's really just taking them back to their true nature of this is who and what we really are. We aren't linear. We aren't something that can be controlled and boxed in or really even understood. We are to be experienced. And when we're fully in that, that's when we are magnetic to the masculine, and they can recognize it's like nectar to them, just like
Mm,
they're like nectar to us. When
yeah.
they're in their masculine energy, it's like, oh my gosh, like
Oh, it's
it's like
intoxicating. Yeah,
it's so
it really
intoxicating.
is.
Yeah. So we are coming back to who we really are, because until we can do that as women, we can't really open ourselves up fully to the masculine. Because if we're
Mm,
resisting our own nature in some way, shape, or form, we will also be resisting his nature. Because if
you're-
if we
yeah,
aren't the truth of who we are, how are we to get that clear reflection back from the masculine?
that's right. That's right. And to
Mm.
even understand being the feminine at all is so hard for us, especially in this day and age, right? When it's the masculine that's held up as the ideal. And to
Mm-hmm.
understand that, like you said, right, there is that the yin and yang of, or the contrast of not boxed, but masculine is structure and solid, firm foundation, where
Yes.
feminine is it's the wild and creative, right? Whereas, and that's also been the it's been almost an unfair archetype to present, well, you're feminine if you're quiet and soft spoken. It's not that really. There's graciousness, and I had a beautiful conversation. You would love him. My the second episode that I did at this season with David Miller, he works in masculine and feminine relationships,
Mm.
and what he expressed was it's the graciousness of the feminine. So that is by nature, yes, more subdued, but not submissive, right? Not submissive in that sense. And yet the woman is still free and kind of undefined and
Mm.
flowy and wild sometimes, right? And it's the man who holds the space and can creates the boundary for her to be safe in expressing and being the creative, experience that she is. So I
Yes,
think
yes.
that's the, yeah,
I love that, because it's not about the man trying to control her. It's
no,
about just holding the container for her to take herself deeper than she can take herself. And that is the beauty of the feminine graciousness, when she can be
yeah,
graceful in the presence of her man or a masculine she feels safe with. It's for him to take her deeper than she can take herself. And that is when she's being graceful. It's not being the arrogant feminine that's just like, oh, you can't give me anything. Like, I am everything.
yeah.
That, mm,
That's
well,
been a
why would he?
mistake of the modern day, I think, right?
Yes. And that I see so much of. And something I want to speak to, so it doesn't slip my mind, is
Yeah.
I teachings have gone both ways, and perhaps it's just happened for our own evolution. There's definitely been men that have taken it way too far, and it's
Hmm.
been controlling. And I believe there's women that's taken it way too far, and it's actually dishonoring to men and the masculine. And I get very, very more than ever now, very aware and suspicious of those teachings, because if there is an honoring of both, it's
Mm,
not really going to take that individual, whether it's men or women, into that understanding of what both energies are inside of them.
mm,
And there's still, now I say that with respect, because of course there's going to be women that absolutely teach the feminine, and perhaps I don't teach the masculine, right? So there's
yeah.
nuances here, and that's just their role. And there's going to be men out there that don't teach the feminine, it is just the masculine. So I'm not speaking to those
That's
teachings that
okay.
are
Yeah.
done. Yes.
Yeah.
But if they're you can tell, I can tell if they're dishonoring the opposite sex. It's like,
Yeah.
what's in there for them that they
Hmm.
need to face? Because you see, you
Yeah.
see people
Well, they're not
that,
in their authentic masculine if they're leaning in
yes,
those areas that become unhealthy, right? And over dominant or controlling for, nefarious
mm,
motives or yeah.
totally,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
totally.
agree. I agree. And that's when it really does show that it isn't, you can be masculine and even hyper masculine, but if you're not whole and healed and stable, you can misuse it. right? And that has happened, unfortunately, does happen, unfortunately. It doesn't, that's what it's so upsetting to me is it's not a blanket, accusation for every single male on the planet. And I think that's the big wound that we're causing,
Mm,
in assigning that of, man means controlling, man means, abusive, man means, we can't trust them, I can do better, or I don't need, that's just creating such a deep wound for the masculine, and it's wounding
yeah.
us as well because, like you said, it's not even allowing us to honor our own masculine or the feminine, because our own masculine becomes hyper masculinized, and that puts us out of balance,
Yes.
right? And then
Yes.
we can't honor the feminine that we truly really are. It should be, the feminine should be, what guides us. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Oh,
what's been,
so beautifully said. Yes.
yeah, yeah. And that is really, I feel like, at the heart of so much of the sicknesses that we're seeing in society. It's coming to a head that it doesn't have to be so vitriolic. It's not going, it's the pendulum swing. It's like, so we're accusing,
Yeah.
of it being so bad. So we're kind of being just as bad in the other direction. Um,
Mm,
and
mm.
that's, yeah.
Totally.
So do you ever work with men in their masculine when you're coaching and teaching?
Yes, I do.
Mm,
And when I started my work doing free tarot card readings, this is how it all began. It just spread like wildfire when I got back from Thailand and Australia. It just spread, and then I started charging only because someone told me to. They're like, "You got to charge for this." I was like, "Oh, it just brings me joy." And so I was getting equal men as women,
mm,
and it was so beautiful to see them really flourish and open up by me just seeing them, like really seeing them. And then I started mentoring men long term as well as women. And I
okay.
noticed they would come for me for two main things: was to feel really deeply held by the feminine, like without judgment, so they could clear those wounds that they've been struggling to clear because they feel like they got to just be tough all the time.
Yeah,
And we went to some really deep spaces. And then also I would hold them accountable for their vision, which they appreciated. It was like both, right? It's like, okay, and have you done the thing you said you were going to do? Which was me honoring their masculine as well, not to just be the mother and the because they
right.
need that too. They need
Yeah.
that, accountability
Yep.
and someone to go, okay, like, where are you headed with that thing? Or why has that sabotage come up? And it was powerful to step into that space because I definitely am naturally more confident guiding women.
Right.
So it takes me to a new edge within me, and it's just me trusting my intuition. I know what to do. If they've come to me, I know what to do. I know how to guide them. But I also really love working with men. It's powerful. And they're able to get into another level of freedom and liberation, I feel, with us women
Yeah.
that may be hard to get somewhere else when they are just loved just as they are and they can just drop the armor for a little bit instead of feeling like they have to be further ahead in that moment. Just dropping the armor and sinking into who they are.
They can be safe too. That's the thing, right? Because the masculine responds to competition or drive, right? That is one of its part of its integral character. But at the same time, they have hearts, right? Like they have big hearts, and we have to remind ourselves of that, and that they can be wounded, and they need to feel safe as well. And so many of them can't feel that in the outside world or in the male spaces that they're in, because it's perceived as weak or over emotional or whatever. And I can understand why those standards need to be maintained in the masculine world, right? Because it maintains the
Totally.
masculine as strong, keeps them driven, keeps them focused, that they do respond to that, but they need the other outlet, right? Sometimes And some men
Yes.
can't even acknowledge that they need it, right? They'll just still coop it up inside. But those who can reach out and say, like, I just need someone to hear me or let me know that, you know, I'm a good
Yes.
person, still, like what I'm doing is right, or I'm on the right track. They need to hear that because it's lacking for them, maybe.
Totally. It's like men just need to be loved. You
Yeah.
know, they just need to be loved. Like, I'll give you a direct example. Like, a beautiful, dear male friend of mine was having a rough day yesterday, and he holds the most beautiful space for me, like all the time for my feminine. And I was like, wow, this is an opportunity for me to hold him in that. And it was an
Mm,
edge for him to lean in and just say, I'm just like, he holds it down for everyone in his life, right? And he's like, this is an edge for me, for you to witness me in all my emotions. But what I just kept saying to him over and over was like, I love you just as you are, like
mm,
in this moment. And that's all I actually needed to say for
yeah.
him. And it brought up emotion. He's like, I've never been met like this before. And for him to just be like, oh, I'm not less lovable because I am feeling all these emotions. It was so healing. And it was healing for me to offer that because in the past, I haven't been able to meet
Mm.
men in that way. In moments, yes, but there was so much I needed to work on to really meet men in that way, like truly from the depths of my heart. And so it was also a gift for me to be able to do that.
I understand what you mean in that it's hard to meet them when they're in their vulnerable space, right? And they're allowing, a peek in to their world and giving you witness. And I feel that so many of us, and I've been guilty of that too, of kind of almost that's the minute you go for the tender point, right? Where we don't witness them or just accept them or love them. We use it as a way to jab them or push back at them, and it's so curious to me, like, why do we do that? Like, what is the
Mm,
trigger for us that we can't hold the space for them? Is it that it feels threatening to see what we need to see them as strong and stable, and when we see them unmet,
mm,
it's scary for us because we rely on that strength, right? So all of a sudden, hold on, I'm
yes.
at a threat. Now I'm unsafe because you're not safe anymore, right? Like that's the curious thing to explore. And it's like you've said that the masculine helps the woman really go deeper because if we stop to ask ourselves, like, why can't we do that? Or what is holding us back from doing that? We'd learn a lot more about us ourselves too.
Yes, I love that so, so much. And it totally used to trigger me so deeply.
Yeah.
When the man I was with would get into an emotional state. And I think you are absolutely spot on from what I've continued to explore. It's like that threatening of safety.
Yeah.
Now, once again, right, nothing's black and white. There are so many
No.
nuances to this. So if we're in a relationship, including a friendship with a man, and it's healthy, so there's that he is just in his purpose, he knows who he is. Like you can rely on him, he's steadfast, and you get to be in your feminine, you feel safe to show up and
Mm,
all that you are. Let's just say the healthy dynamic of man and woman. When he gets into his emotions, it's going to be different because you know who he
mm,
is like all of the time. He's reliable, he's consistent, he's
right.
steadfast. So when he gets into his emotions, it's like, it's not going to be this thing that's going to happen all of the time. Unless he's going through like a big
Mm,
challenge, he could be going through a psychological shift. Sometimes
yeah.
men can really struggle,
Yeah. Just like
but
the rest of us, right? I mean, like they
totally,
have their own challenges as well. Yeah.
totally. But if we're in a dynamic where that man is constantly resorting to that because he's not able to hold himself and he starts relying on us,
Yeah.
like I've been in that dynamic a few times, I don't know what to do. And initially I hold this space and then I just kind of get into my masculine because someone
Mm,
has to. And then
mm,
it's kind of like I don't know what I look back, I'm like, I can feel how I just didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And then he didn't feel like he could open up to me. And then I felt bitter because I
Mm,
was like, oh, but I'm holding it down for, and I think it was just like I didn't know what to do.
yeah.
And he didn't know how to guide me in it either. And that can get
Right.
really sticky and challenging.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's really important for both to have the tools and the awareness
Yeah.
of my partner can't be there for me 100% of the time. And
Oh,
I can't shame and judge them if they're not there for me, or if my partner gets triggered because I'm going through something, I can't hold that against them.
yeah. Oh, that's huge. That's
Oof,
huge.
we got to be
That's huge.
sovereign enough to go,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, they're triggered by me being in it right now, and that's okay. I'm not going to try to
Yeah.
drag them in it with me.
Yeah. Or they just don't have the capacity. Like
Yes.
some people just don't have the capacity for the amount of like the expansive emotion we can project, right? When we are going
Ooh.
through things. Some men don't have that space all at once because it feels like a steamroller from us sometimes. But I think you
Mm.
made a great point earlier too that I want to also kind of like touch on in that when you said like you would go into your masculine because you didn't know what else to do. And that's that unbalance, right? It's those moments too. If the man is stepping out of his masculine too often or, isn't solid in his masculine, it creates a
Yes.
vacuum, right? Like there has to be a balance, even if it's not the healthy balance, something happens where we instinctively feel the need to step into our own masculine to pick up the slack to bring to hold us all
Mm-hmm.
together. Like you said, somebody has to do it. And
Yes.
women kind of almost too easily will step into their masculine. I find like it almost seems like it's easier
Yes.
for us to step into our masculine than men to step into their feminine. Right. Modern
Oh,
society too also has not
oh,
helped, you know.
that's
um
so true.
yeah,
That right
yeah.
there is just so
Oh, there's so
powerful.
many gems. Yeah. Yeah, right. I
Oh,
mean, modern society has put us in the
yep.
male sphere. Fine, equal access to everything, of course. But what it has done is it has unbalanced us, right? It has just added everything onto our
Absolutely.
shoulders. And like the only way to get ahead is to be like a man if you want, right? All of those things.
Oh,
So by doing that, and I'm just going to follow this for a second, by doing that, we've actually pushed them out of their masculine because we're
oh,
showing them that we're competent, we can do it. So they take a step back, which like would stand to reason that will only continue stepping more forward into the masculine the more they step out of it. And that just exacerbates the imbalance until it's like the way it is now, which is not healthy for anybody.
oh my gosh. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. That's it right there. That's it right there. And men may not know what's going on in an unconscious level, and that they just
Yeah.
instantly get withdrawn or they feel like,
Yeah.
but the
Right.
men that are aware that are doing this work can name that. And it's a great thing. They can name that and go, when you just fully go into your masculine, it's like, or feel like you need to take up that full space. Like it takes us, there's no space for us to come in.
Yeah.
Men need space to come in.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I read something the other day. It was in the container that we first met in, the
Mm.
container, and I found my little journal from that container we were in.
Oh.
And the timing right before our interview, I'm like, come on, what are the chances? I have not seen that journal since 2016. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know I wrote all these things down. And I wanted to speak to this. It said men would rather be respected than feel unloved. And I was like,
Mm.
ooh,
Yeah. Yep.
whoa. That just hit me so deeply because I know as women, we want to be respected too, but I know for us, it's like we want to feel loved.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Like,
right.
but for the masculine, they would rather feel respected than, and I was like, oof,
Yeah.
wow.
And it's so funny because I just recorded another episode that's going to come out in the next week or two with a male coach. His name is Ryan Yakomi, and he actually said exactly that. He said that's exactly that men want to be respected, women need the love, and And it's true, we'll take that's why we end up in these relationships too sometimes, right? Because we'll take the disrespect so long as we can convince ourselves that we're loved, right? That
Oh,
somewhere in there they love us somewhere. We take it, and then we end up in these toxic relationships, or we end up
hmm.
unhappy because we've accepted this disrespect.
Oh,
Wow. Oh my gosh, Abby, we're just whew. Okay, this is amazing.
oh, it's just so powerful. I love this conversation. I love this. It's
Yeah.
so needed. And when you asked me, I felt so honored, and it's like I've been so humbled in the fires of relationship, and I'm
Mm,
currently single and celibate, but I've been so in it. I've experienced it again and again, and I have learned so much. And especially this last relationship I was in, it's humbled me like no other relationship has. And I'll always have love for this man for the rest of eternity. And it just showed me so much of all of these dynamics in all of the nuances that I had overlooked and overstepped. And I've just been sitting with it and clearing it and acknowledging it and healing it. And for the last 9 months, nonstop.
wow.
And it's been so humbling and powerful and intense and beautiful in all of the ways of like, wow, I thought I was really in devotion, but I wasn't. I wasn't.
Mm,
And you can't force yourself as a woman to be in devotion. It's got to come
no.
from the desire so deep within. And I
Yeah.
needed to go through that experience for me to finally go, what is true devotion? Because
Mm,
I'm not honoring the masculine when I am not in true devotion, including in myself.
yeah.
And Peru just cracked me open. And it came from the deep desire, from my heartache, from the dysfunction I'd experienced to be in true devotion once and for all. But it's like
That's
we've got to make
incredible.
that decision as women. Like I think sometimes we
Yeah.
try to force it,
Yeah.
but it's an unfurling. We've got to take that space to really go there. We can't force that. I really get that now. We can't force it.
Well, and that's it. It's easy to say we step into our feminine and just embody your feminine energy. It is a long journey because what you thought you understood last year is not what it is this year, right? That's myself. I mean, I spent 7 years single after my divorce, and I thought I
Mm,
learned a lot, and I did. I woke up kind of to a lot of things about myself over those years, and I did a lot of self work. And now in my relationship for the last 3.5 years, it's kind of like I learned nothing. Before, like I thought I learned so much, and now I'm like, oh, because it's not even that. It's just that now I'm being called to like put it all into use, right? It's very easy when you do the theory, right? But
oh,
now I have to tap into it on the spot,
mm,
in action, in face of like triggers and all kinds of,
yes.
just different, under in face of the masculine. It's easy to do
Oh,
it on your own, and it's important. Like I'm a
yes.
firm believer of taking time to be celibate and really spending time with yourself. I really believe that that is essential, especially after long relationships. You absolutely need it, but then you need the counterbalance to put it into
Yes.
practice and deal with the
Yes.
masculine, because like I am nowhere near I thought I was, although I've made incredible leaps, and I'm much more in tune, not just with him and like how he operates and how his mind works, and like that sometimes the languages are like here, like I'll say one thing and he's got this going, and it's so frustrating in the moment, but I realize later it's like, oh, this was me being like over masculinized, right, in my behavior and what I was trying to say. And I was shutting him down, and he was
Mm,
hearing something else entirely too.
totally.
So I've had to learn that it's not, I'm not lowering myself, right? Like all of those like feminine tropes where we think we're
Mm,
low, it's not. It's our energy, and the energy that will
yes.
best connect with that masculine energy so they can hear us, so they
Oh
can
my God,
open
yes.
to us, right? Like that's, and it's not easy. I spent many, like probably a good 20 years of my life in a masculine state between like a bad marriage and then single motherhood was like, that's all masculine. Um,
Totally.
so to unlearn that and unravel those, you know, wirings and predispositions, it takes time. We
It
make a lot of mistakes along the way.
Yes. And I love that you've spoken into that. Like it takes time.
Yeah,
And I absolutely agree. There is no greater growth than being in partnership, than being
yeah,
in relationship. Because
yeah,
it's true. There is a point where it's like, it's easy, being on your own and doing all of this and the theory. But here's the thing, and here's the humbling thing: we can't do it all on our own. And this
no.
is why I'm so passionate about community work, grief work, as I'm
Mm.
stepping into,
Yes,
that right now in my program, because I'm so passionate about that. We're not meant to do all of it on our own. The purpose of
no.
coming together, where it's in community or partnership, is it will bring stuff up in you.
Mm,
And sometimes we can think that there's something wrong with us, um, where there is nothing wrong with us. There's that
no,
beautiful counterpart that is showing us what we need to revisit, what we need to
no,
be with. And there is nothing wrong. It's a
no.
really healthy thing. And I love that you spoke into that. I really,
Yeah,
really do.
and when it's done, when it's done with love and when we're ready to
Yes.
reflect to face it, that's the thing. We have to be honest with ourselves and hear it and go like, oh, okay, this is
Yes.
what I need to work on. It
Yes.
brings benefit to both in the partnership. And I just want to go back to one thing you said before I forget, because you said about sharing, what you're going through, and sometimes it triggers them and they either can't hold space for it or whatever. The important thing to remember, and I kind of want to
Yes.
make sure the audience, biggest lesson I learned is sometimes they can't hear us, right? Like they can't hold the space for us. It doesn't mean they don't love us. But because women are who we are and how we are, it's so important for us to create feminine community for support so that we can go
Mm,
blast that emotional energy there, right? And still come back, but
yes.
at least it's tempered so that we can share it with them in a way that then they can be at their best and support us because they do love us and they want us to be happy, in a healthy
Yes.
relationship, right? So they want to hear us, they want to share, but they just can't. Sometimes we're so full of that emotion. It's okay. It's
Mm.
okay to go share with your girlfriend or your mentor, and know that it doesn't lessen your relationship. It doesn't lessen your
Oh,
partnership. Like that's a huge thing, right? Because it's like, well, they have to be everything for us, and they really can't. It's just
oh,
it's not fair to expect them to be everything for us all the time, right?
oh my gosh. This right here is huge. This
Yeah.
is huge.
Yeah.
Absolutely massive. And, I apologize whether energetically or in person. I have in person to some exes, how I did that for them, like
Mm,
projected onto them that they had to be everything. And if they couldn't show up for me in that moment, it was somehow um, a lack of love. And that was my
yeah.
wounding. That was absolutely my wounding. And I look back and I'm like, oh, wow. And the most important thing is that we don't shame ourselves, but we recognize it, we
Yeah.
acknowledge it, and we do something about it. Because,
Yeah.
yeah, I absolutely agree. And sometimes when I'm going through something, I would actually prefer my women to hold me in it and not him.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like,
They,
that's a healthy thing.
yeah.
We need
Yes.
sisterhood. We
Yeah.
absolutely, just like they need brotherhood, they need
Yes.
men to go to. No matter what we believe as creatures, how religious or non-religious we are, that is a
Yep.
very
I fully
primal,
agree.
basic human need. We can't transcend that.
No. Nope.
We're not
I fully
supposed
agree.
to.
Yeah. I fully
Yeah.
agree. I think this is a great spot to start closing off our episode because we've come to some incredible conclusions and shared some amazing gems. This has been the most incredible talk with you, Abby. I'm looking forward to continuing this talk with you exclusively in my Wisdom Well group. So if you want to hear the rest of our conversation, you'll have to join my group, the Wisdom Well, on Facebook, and I'll have the link for it in the show notes. But right now, how about if you just let everybody know, talk about the grief program that you're doing and then how they can reach out to you, because I've been seeing you posting about the new grief program.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. This is the second round I've done this grief and trauma
Mm,
leadership program. This round is just for women. It begins today. Actually, it's the first call, but the doors are open for another 2 weeks if you feel so inclined.
mm.
By the time this comes out, anyway.
Yeah, it'll be,
But
but maybe they'll be ready for, if you do a third round, it'll tweak some
totally,
years.
totally. But if there is anyone listening and you're curious about the work that I do, just reach out. I'm here. And I believe in the power of doing grief and trauma work as well as pleasure work. So that is the realms that I enter into my work. But men absolutely are welcome into my world. And I still work with men in the private, intimate capacity. So yeah, I love what I do. I love seeing
Amazing.
people be free and liberated from suffering, um, as much as possible from the own self-created suffering that, you know,
Yeah,
we can
we inflict
create.
on ourselves regularly.
Totally. Because I believe we can't avoid the pain on this experience, but we can avoid really making it harder for ourselves. So, yeah. Um,
Yeah, there's
yeah.
suffering, and then
So,
there's suffering for that doesn't get you anywhere either, right? Because if you can take something away from it, then at least there was a purpose. Right. But if we're just flagellating ourselves and going nowhere with it, that's what we want to stay away from. So where can our audience find you?
I hang out a lot on Facebook and Instagram, and I also have a private women's Facebook group as well for the women that want to jump in and connect to other beautiful women that are on the path. So, yeah, come say hi. I won't bite.
Amazing. I'll have the links for you to contact and reach out to Abby and find her in the show notes. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I hope you enjoyed today. Have a wonderful day. Bye.
Yes. Bye.